I was ordered to write what I saw, though the order itself came before the event, as if the writ had been signed long before the hand that signed it existed. This record, if it survives, belongs to the Ordo Xenos, though the voice you hear belongs to me alone and attaché on a black ship whose course was diverted by decree. None of us were permitted to question. The words that follow are mine, but they do not sound like me already. They feel borrowed. The impossible revealed itself in the first seconds of arrival. The webway breach tore open with the usual shriek of reality giving way, but what lay beyond was wrong even by the standard of that alien labyrinth. Commorragh stood before us, or rather, a fracture of it suspended in an eternal collapse. A district of the Dark City had been broken, its towers half fallen, its bridges snapped mid-arc, its avenues spilling into abyss, yet nothing moved. The fragments hung in stasis, as though some colossal hand had struck the city and frozen the blow in place. The sight should have been majestic. Instead, it exuded dread. Like a corpse still warm, it looked alive, but every instinct insisted otherwise. Orders arrived in clinical tones. Deploy a survey detachment. Gather telemetry. Identify anomaly. The Inquisitor did not disembark. He rarely did. The work was for us, the disposable flesh that knelt to his authority. I obeyed as I always had, adjusting seals on my rebreather. Listening to the clack of boots echo through the embarkation deck, we did not pray before entry. We recited data confirmation litanies. Duty before creed, though most of us whispered the Emperor's name anyway. Our landing craft slid into the frozen fracture. Instruments failed instantly. Auspex loops returned our own biometrics, but not from the present moment. Tower's old signatures echoed back, distorted as though replayed by something that did not understand the meaning of life. Vox chatter returned doubled, our voices repeated. An instant after we spoke, not quite a line, Sergeant Vallis tightened his grip on his lost carbine and muttered that the place stank of ritual. He was right. Commorragh has always been a charnel house of blasphemy, but this was different. This was absence pretending to be presence. We sat down on what passed for a plaza, though the ground tilted at impossible angles, like a floor collapsing yet forever caught in descent. I logged the structural readings. Steel beams pulsed faintly, as if breathing. I did not log that detail. Some truths are better left unsaid in official record. The first irregularity was not the environment, but the hull of our own vessel. The word was carved there, shallow but unmistakable, as if etched. During transit, flayed. No tool marks, no damage alarms triggered. Yet the metal bore the letters in perfect high Gothic script. None of us had written it. The Inquisitor did not acknowledge it. He only signaled that the mission clock had begun. The squad dispersed by quadrant, every footfall stirring dust that did not behave as dust should. It lingered in air too long, drifting like ash in water. Auspex lit with impossible readings. Body heat recorded behind us where no one stood. Atmospheric pressure fluctuating between vacuum and high standard every other second. Still, we advanced. Habit is stronger than terror, at least at first. Sergeant Vallis assigned me the log detail of the northern approach, though what was north in a city frozen mid-collapse meant little. I obeyed, dictating descriptions into the slate, alternating technical phrasing with catechisms drilled into me since youth. It steadied my hand. It did not steady my heart. The statues appeared next, towering over the cracked avenue. They were grotesque, though not by design alone. Flayed monarchs carved in obsidian, their musculature exposed in obscene artistry. Each face, though alien in sculpt, bore an uncanny familiarity. I recognized imperial hero Sadravian, Marshal Theron, even the death mask likeness of Lord Solar Macarius. Beside them, alien visages I could not name, but felt instinctively were once rulers, generals, lords of Xenos courts, and then, worst of all, one bore the face of our own commanding officer. It was Vallis, perfect in every line, though his eyes were hollow. He swore, cursed in a voice stripped of conviction, and turned away. None of us spoke further on it, but all had seen. I cataloged them with bureaucratic detachment. Though my hands shook, my notes mentioned stone density, height, distribution along the plaza. I did not mention the numbers carved into the thrones, upon which they sat. Always the same, repeated without pattern. 13. 13 scratched again and again, like a chant left in geometry. I knew then it was not a decoration, but a count. Something waited for completion. The dust thickened. Our vox relays strained. Whispers came through, not in Eldar tongue, but in our own voices. I heard my name called, twice. from two different directions. Valus ordered silence, but silence was impossible. The place itself spoke with us, back at us, around us. Then the statues blinked. I recorded it clinically. Eyelids moved. Valus barked for Auspex verification. Readings confirmed. Thermal shift consistent with muscle contraction. I froze. The statues froze. The squad broke formation. Weapons raised but hesitant to fire. Nothing moved again. Perhaps nothing ever. Had then came the scream on Vox. A scout on the eastern approach, panicked, incoherent. His words made no sense. He spoke of a reflection of himself without skin, watching from the dark spires. Valus ordered regroup, but the transmission cut mid-word. The last sound was not his voice, but the scraping of something wet. I remember the silence afterward more than the scream itself. The silence carried weight, like a cathedral when the congregation departs. It was then I realized the plaza was no ruin, no accident of collapse. It was a sanctum, arranged for ritual. We were not explorers here. We were supplicants who had not meant to kneel. Our Auspex units shut down entirely, one by one, though their runes continued to glow faintly, not in Mechanicus green, but in blood red. The squad checked power packs, cables, seals, everything functional, yet nothing obeyed. Valus cursed again, but softer now, as though not to wake something. The men glanced at me, for I carried the Inquisitor's seal, though I had no more authority than any of them. I could only log the moment and whisper the litany of protection beneath my breath. The statues blinked again. This time, none of us denied it. I felt then a pressure beneath my skin. Not pain, not heat, but a presence like fingers tracing veins. From the inside, my rebreather fogged with the rhythm of my own breath. But I was no longer sure it was mine. We regrouped at the landing craft, though the path seemed longer now, as if space had stretched. When we arrived, the word carved into the hull had changed. It no longer read Flayed, it read Chosen. The dust had not settled since we first stepped into the fracture, but by then we understood it never would. It drifted around us in slow, unnatural patterns, pulled by no wind. Each mote shimmered faintly, as if catching a light source that did not exist. Valus ordered lanterns raised, but their beams bent oddly, widening and narrowing as though something unseen adjusted them. My log records the angled distortions in degrees, but no measurement captured the truth. We walked in light that did not behave as light. The statues loomed closer as we advanced. Flayed monarchs, their exposed sinew carved with obscene precision, sat upon thrones of cracked bone. Their faces shifted the longer I looked. At first, imperial heroes, then alien tyrants, then faces from memory, familiar in the worst ways. Private Henry swore he saw his mother. Valus struck him across the helm to silence his babble. But he was not alone. One by one, each of us saw something personal etched into those flayed visages. None spoke further. Silence was safer. It was not only the statues that unsettled us, but their placement. They did not form a random gallery. They lined the plaza, in procession, all facing inward, toward a raised platform where the dust swirled in unnatural vortices. The pattern was ritualistic, as precise as a Mechanicus circuit. 13 thrones stood in total, 12 occupied, 1 empty. I logged this in strict mechanical phrasing, but the truth was obvious. A place had been left for something or someone not yet enthroned. Our Auspex should have failed entirely, but instead it repeated information in loops, biosign readings, cycled back at odd intervals, showing squad members and locations they had not yet reached. Henry's vitals displayed 3 minutes ahead of his actual movement. When Valus questioned the readings, Henry fell to his knees in convulsions. His armor clattered. His breath rattled in wet gasps. We crowded him, weapons raised, uncertain whether to aid or execute. His visor display showed his pulse already flatlined. Yet he lived, gasping at our boots. His flesh bulged beneath his gorget, as though something beneath his skin pressed outward to escape. Then, as suddenly as it began, the fit passed. He stood, unsteady but alive. His vitals stabilized. Auspex confirmed him present, but his future recordings still pulsed. 13 minutes ahead, waiting for him. We moved in formation, weapons trained on all sides. Valus muttered clipped prayers to the Emperor between orders. The plaza seemed endless, each step echoing not once, but thrice, as if we were followed by our own shadows repeating the act of walking. I turned once and saw them pale outlines of ourselves, skinless, marching a few breaths behind. I told no one. They would not have believed me, though I knew they saw their own. Whispers carried through the voxnet, not distortion but cadence. Our own litanies repeated back to us, slowed, deepened, warped until each syllable was a groan. They did not stop when we fell silent. Valis demanded calm's discipline, but no order silenced the echoes. It was then I realized the statues were not still. Their eyelids quivered, their lips twitched, the faintest signs of muscle beneath stone. I felt a chill that no rebreather could filter. We reached the central daze. The dust here behaved differently. It coalesced into streams that traced across the floor, drawing patterns like arteries. When I crouched to record, I found they spelled numbers, always the same, 13, written again and again, sometimes in perfect alignment, sometimes fractured and inverted. I could not stop myself from counting. Valis pulled me up by the collar and hissed at me to focus. His voice cracked. Even the sergeant felt it. Private. Jaren broke ranks first. He screamed that one of the statues had moved. We turned, weapons raised, but saw nothing. His scream continued, even after his mouth shut tight. It echoed from the statue nearest him, a flayed monarch, whose face mirrored his own. The sound did not match his lips. It came from the stone throat. Valis ordered fire. Lances of red shot across the plaza, striking obsidian. The statue did not crack. The scream did not falter. Then Jaren fell, lifeless, though his scream carried on. It still carried on, long after his body stilled, until the sound folded back into silence like a hymn ending. We left his corpse where it fell, not from neglect, but because none of us dared touch it. His skin had already begun to peel away at the edges of his armor, as though eager to depart. I marked the coordinates in my slate, hands trembling. My words were precise, bureaucratic, but my breath came like prayer. Our path narrowed between two statues. I refused to meet their eyes. Valis muttered orders. The men shuffled in tight formation. Then, from the edge of my vision, I saw movement. Not imagined, not peripheral trickery. The eyelid of one statue descended, slow and deliberate. Then the other's mouth opened, and within its flayed lips I saw teeth wet, fresh, glistening. Not stone, not carved. Flesh, alive. The vox spike was static, then cleared to reveal a new voice. It was my voice, speaking words I had not yet spoken. We are not alone in this place. We were never meant to be. I froze. The words had not left my throat, but they echoed through the squad's comms all the same. Valis turned toward me, eyes wide with accusation. I had no defense. I had not spoken. I will swear this to my last breath. The statues leaned, not by much an inch, perhaps two, but enough to shatter all pretense of stillness. I felt my stomach turn as the obsidian monarch shifted closer, angling toward us, their hollow eyes alive with pale wetness. Valis raised his weapon again, and for a moment discipline held. Then Henrith dropped his rifle and bolted. He did not make 3 steps before the dust swallowed him whole. Not drift, not suffocation. It rose like a wave, engulfed him, and when it fell back, he was gone. His Auspex readings remained. 13 minutes ahead, still waiting. We regrouped, fewer now, tighter now. The plaza seemed darker, though our lamps still glowed. The statue seemed closer, though our steps had not moved. Then, Valis ordered fallback toward the craft. None argued. We began retreat, steps quickened, hearts pounding. Behind us, the statues blinked again, in unison this time, like an audience acknowledging a performance. The vox crackled one last time as we crossed back into the landing corridor. It was not static. It was not our voices. It was a single word, repeated in liturgical cadence, as if chanted by a congregation. 13, 13, 13. When we reached the craft, the whole bore fresh letters carved beneath the first. Where once it had read chosen, now a second word burned into the steel dot it read watched. The hull carried the words now, etched in lines as perfect as any artisan's hand. Chosen, watched. We stared at them longer than we should have, each of us waiting for the letters to rearrange themselves again. They did not. The steel was cool beneath my glove, unscarred in any measurable way, yet the grooves were there. Undeniable. Valis ordered us away, his voice harsh, but brittle. We obeyed. The obedience was little more than habit by then. The plaza no longer looked the same when we stepped back into it. The angles had shifted. Statues stood in positions I could not account for. The space itself seemed narrower, though no wall had moved. My log recorded the measurements automatically, and the figures contradicted what my eyes saw. The error margin stacked like a litany of falsehoods. I did not know which to trust, the instruments, or the dread in my bones. Valis demanded another telemetry sweep. Tech Adept Fear unspooled his Ben Cant, clicking through Vox sprays and machine invocations. His Auspex should have returned air pressure, temperature, atmospheric integrity. Instead, it gave us back echoes of ourselves, not merely bioscience, but our orders, our words, replayed before we spoke them. Valis barked a command to advance in line. 2 seconds before his voice sounded, the Auspex recorded the same words. At first we dismissed it as malfunction, but then came Henrith's turn. He asked for permission to break formation and scout. The Auspex answered before he did, request denied. Then Valis's voice followed, identical, request denied. Henrith froze, muttered a prayer, and fell silent. Time fractured in small ways. A scratch appeared on Jaren's helm before his head struck a wall when the impact came. It landed precisely on the pre-existing mark. Valis kept us moving, but the men whispered. I whispered too, though only in my mind, repeating the simplest litany I knew. The Emperor protects. It felt less like prayer, more like begging. We advanced deeper into the fracture. The air grew heavy, damp with humidity that should not have existed. Every breath tasted of copper. My Vox clicked with interference, not random static, but rhythm. It pulsed in 3-beat patterns, like a heart. Valis shouted for silence, but silence only magnified the sound. Private Doran stumbled, clutching his throat. His scream filled the Vox even though his mouth stayed closed. We turned to him, weapons raised without thought, his visor fogged from the inside. I glimpsed something pressing against the glass, as if his own tongue sought escape through the wrong exit. Then the sound cut off. His body slumped, and he lay still. His vitals still pulsed on the Auspex, 13 seconds ahead, like Henrith before him. We left his corpse. We always left them now. Fear tried again with the Auspex, muttering. Longer invocations, binary screeds spilling through his Vox grill. The machine answered, but not in his tongue. Instead, it spoke in mine. It used my voice, my cadence, repeating the log entry I had just recorded, but altered. It said, 13 thrones remain. Flesh will sit where stone waits. I did not write those words. They wrote themselves. The squad faltered. Valis shouted discipline, demanded faith. Invoked the Emperor's name with fury. His voice cracked mid-curse, and what finished the sentence was not him. It was something deeper, slower, stretched across Vox channels. His throat moved, but the words belonged to the fracture. We came upon another body. At first we thought it was one of ours, lost in the dust. The armor was Imperial issue, insignia of an inquisitorial detachment, but the flesh inside was wrong. It was absent, skin folded inward, a hollow sheath of meat with no bone. Yet the visor turned as we approached. Inside the helmet, a pair of eyes blinked, wet and alive, floating in the empty cavity. Henrith fired. First, a lost bolt through the skull. The eyes did not die. They only blinked again, slower. Mournful dot the Vox screamed then. Not sound, not signal, a choir. Voices layered one atop another. Dozens of hymns, all sung backward. They filled the air, until we could not hear our own boots strike the stone. I fell to my knees, clutching my ears, though the sound came from within my skull. It pressed against bone, rattled teeth, surged down my spine. When it ended, Valis stood alone in the center of the squad. His faceplate was off. He should never have removed it. His eyes were red, bloodshot, wet as though freshly washed. His skin looked looser than it should, as though it hung not from bone, but from something pulling underneath. He looked at me directly. The thrones wait, he said, but the sound came through Vox channels, not from his lips. The statues had moved again. I cannot say when. They stood closer, their eyelids trembling, lips twitching, faces shifting between strangers and our own. Comrades. I saw myself in one, skinless and staring. I broke my log protocol and began to pray openly. I do not know which words reached the slate, or which were lost in sobs. The Auspex lit once more, violently, every room burning crimson. Fear cried out in Ben Herrick, a machine prayer I did not recognize. The response came instantly, every room. Repeated his words in Gothic, spelled out letter by letter, like a child mimicking a parent. Then the uni burned out, smoke hissing from vents. He dropped it. and for a moment I thought he had died. But he rose again, eyes glassy, and began repeating his own Ben Herrick in reverse. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. Instead, I logged the moment, my hands shaking so violently the slate recorded errors with every line. Duty is the only anchor. Left when reality has abandoned you. I held to it as if it were scripture. The fracture darkened. No light failed. Its shadows deepened. The statues leaned again, deliberate, undeniable. The plaza exhaled heat, the stench of iron and charnel pits. My rebreather clogged with it. Valis ordered withdrawal, but the Vox delayed his command by several seconds. By the time the order reached us, we had already begun to retreat. I felt something then. Not touch, not sight. A presence behind my skin, pressing outward, curious. My pulse stuttered. My fingers twitched, and for a moment I saw myself from outside, walking in line with the squad. Skinless, faceless, yet unmistakably me. When the vision faded, I wept into my respirator. We reached the landing corridor, fewer again. The craft waited, silent. The words on the hull had shifted once more. Beneath chosen, watched, a third word had appeared, etched deep, impossible to ignore. Dotted red echoed. The hull's inscription followed us into the craft, whether carved or imagined. I checked thrice. The word echoed was there each time, no matter the angle of light. Fear muttered in reverse Ben Herrick, his voice caught between prayer and seizure. Valis silenced him with a gauntleted strike, but even the impact seemed delayed, repeating a fraction of a second later as if the sound itself hesitated to leave. None of us removed our helmets after Doran. None of us wanted to risk seeing what waited inside the visor. The craft lifted without command. Valis cursed, wrestled with the controls, but they moved beneath his hands of their own accord. The thrusters fired in silent obedience, carrying us deeper instead of back to orbit. The Auspex was dead, yet we felt motion downward, across a gravity that had no direction. My stomach folded over itself. Henrith vomited inside his rebreather and begged for a mercy kill. Valis ignored him. The descent ended without warning. No jolt, no change in thrust. One moment we were in motion, the next we stood on stone again. The ramp lowered. We expected the plaza. We found a hall instead. The ceiling stretched out of sight, and the walls rippled as though carved from liquid obsidian. The floor was not stone, but steps, endless, spiraling downward in impossible geometry. At the center of the hall stood a throne carved from bones. They were too large to be human, too structured to be random. Some were rib cages inverted to form armrests. Others were skulls stacked into the shape of a crown. The throne faced us, waiting. Valis advanced first, Laskin raised. None followed willingly, but fear of being last compelled us forward. I logged every detail, though my slate flickered with static after each word. Replacing letters with inverted glyphs, it no longer mattered. Recording was reflex, duty, the only proof that I still existed. The throne did not remain empty. A figure sat within it the instant Valis set foot on the first step. No transition, no arrival. One breath he was not there, the next he was. A man, yet not a man. His body wore armor older than the Imperium, plates inscribed with scripts that shifted whenever I looked along. His helm was absent, revealing a face with no flesh, only a skull, wet with the sheen of blood that dripped without ceasing, where eyes should have burned. Darkness stared back. He opened his jaw, and the hall trembled. The sound was not a voice, but the recollection of one, as though memory itself had been weaponized. Words forced themselves into my skull. I am the first king. We collapsed as one. My slate fell, recording nothing but shrieking static. Valis forced himself upright. His defiance cracked, but not gone. He shouted his name, his oaths, his service to the throne of Terra. The king answered only with silence. Then, as Valis's name still echoed, it repeated the word Valis back at him, stretched and broken, as it fed through 1,000 dead mouths. Statues lined the stairway now. Though none had been there before, each bore the face of one of us, and each moved slightly. When I blinked, I saw my own twin in stone, its mouth ajar, whispering soundlessly. Henrith broke first. He screamed and opened fire, lost bolts flashing against the throne. The figure did not move, but the hall reacted. The walls convulsed, bleeding shadows. Henrith's fire turned inward, beams striking his own body though his weapon remained aimed. Ahead, he burned from chest to skull, falling in twitching spasms. The king's blood-slick skull tilted slightly, acknowledging the sacrifice. The throne spoke again, 13 thrones remain. Flesh will sit where stone waits. The oath is older than your emperor. Valus defied him still. He demanded the name of the oath, the meaning of the fracture, the reason our dead did not stay dead. The king did not answer in Gothic. He answered in images. My visor flooded with visions, not mine. Worlds split open, oceans of blood, an empire collapsing into its own shadow. At the heart of it all, 13 thrones stood in silence, each occupied by a hollow shell of meat with no bone. My breath stuttered. My mind clawed for meaning. Jaren clawed at his own eyes. He muttered that he could see himself already seated, that the stone had chosen him. Valus ordered him to stop, but orders were nothing here. Jaren tore his face apart before we could restrain him, leaving only a pulp of red and bone fragments. The statues blinked in unison. One more step had been claimed. Fear advanced then, chanting in his reverse machine speech. His steps matched the rhythm of the pulsing vox heart we had heard before. The king lifted one hand, and the adept froze in mid-syllable. His jaw continued moving, but the sound came from the throne instead. His voice bent into the king's tongue. Fear collapsed, his body dry and brittle, like parchment burned from within. The king curled his hand, and Fear's corpse folded into a cube of flesh and bone, set neatly at the base of the throne. The message was clear. The king was building. Valus staggered, but his face still flared in denial. He drew his sidearm, raised it to his temple, and shouted that no oath was greater than the emperor's. He pulled the trigger. The round entered his skull, but exited nowhere. His body remained standing, his eyes open, his lips still moving in prayer. He did not die. He did not live. He simply remained, caught between both states. The king leaned forward, and for the first time I felt something like amusement radiating from him. I wanted to beg. I wanted to fall prostrate and plead ignorance. Instead, I logged. My slate flickered, but I forced my hand to move. My entry was simple. The first king waits. The throne room darkened again. The stairs stretched into infinity. The statues' mouths opened in unison, voiceless yet thunderous. Their faces all wore ours. The king raised his skull and looked into me, not at me, but through me, as if the fracture itself sought entry. His words struck without sound. You will sit. You will echo. You are already written. The slate carved those words by itself, no hand touching it. The letters cut into the screen as though the glass were flesh. I dropped it, but it remained burning with the inscription. My name appeared beneath. Malric. I do not remember speaking my name aloud. I do not remember thinking it. Yet the king knew, and the hall whispered it back to me in thousands of voices. We were fewer still when the hall released us. Valus remained unmoving, eyes alive, but body trapped. Jaren was pulp. Fear was a cube. Henrith was ash. Only I and two others staggered toward the exit. The throne's glow followed us, blood dripping from its skeletal frame. When we reached the craft, it no longer bore the word echoed. A new word had been etched, deeper than before, gouged so far into the hole that light itself seemed swallowed, dotted, red written. We sealed the craft behind us, though no seal felt absolute anymore. The ramp hissed closed, locking with the sound of steel grinding bone. I sat in silence beside Malkor and Saren. Only 3 of us remained. Though my mind listed more names than truth permitted, I counted them on my fingers. Doran, Henrith, Fear, Jaren, Valus, and yet another name surfaced unbidden, Kale. No Kale had joined us. I searched memory, mission order, biometrics, and found nothing. Still, I felt I had spoken with him not. Hours ago, the fracture was feeding us ghosts. Saren muttered litanies, half coherent, as though the syllables had fractured mid-prayer. He pressed his hands against his chest plate, as if expecting something inside to burst through. Malkor whispered that the glyphs on the hull had changed again. I did not wish to see, but duty compelled. We unsealed the viewport. The void outside was not void. The city no longer rested where we had landed. Instead, a black ocean stretched in every direction, waves frozen mid-crest, like glass carved into the likeness of water. Across its surface shimmered reflections of us, countless, stretching without end. They moved slightly out of sequence. My reflection lingered a second long after I blinked. Malkor smiled when he did not. The word on the hull had altered again. It no longer read written. Now, each letter flowed, twisting across the metal, reforming itself with every glance. Sometimes it spelled remembered, sometimes forgotten, sometimes my own name, sometimes Kel's. The auspex flickered back to life unbidden. its display filled with biometric signatures, not 3, not even 6, hundreds, all matching ours each, bearing tiny deviations, as though every possible version of us had been scanned and archived. The Vox crackled. For a moment, we heard our own voices. Seal the hatch. Check the charge. Why is Kale missing? The last line froze me. Malcor swore he hadn't spoken it. Saren wept, saying he remembered Kale's laughter during training drills. My own tongue burned with his name, though I could not place his face. The fracture was riding people into us. The craft shuddered. No engine had engaged, yet the vessel moved again. Downward. Sideways? The sense of direction meant nothing. The view outside shifted. Waves of black glass receded, revealing a corridor of mirrors stretching into eternity. Each mirror bore our images, but older, younger, flayed, armored, or stripped of bone. Some were headless, others bloated, others crawling with insectal limbs. They smiled when we did not. I tried to shut the viewport, but my hands locked, disobedient. The controls resisted, as though my will had to compete with another lodged inside the same flesh. Saren screamed, clawing at his helmet, shouting that someone else's memories were inside. He listed battles he had never fought, victories he had never earned, wounds he had never received. Each recollection poured from his mouth like poison until he convulsed and bit through his own tongue. The blood sprayed across the viewport, and every mirrored Saren licked their own reflection in perfect unison. Malcor dragged him back, tried to bind the wound, but the wound was not his tongue alone. His veins turned black beneath the skin, spreading in branching fractures that glowed faintly. His body stiffened, bones cracking from within. He howled with another man's voice scales. I swear to the throne, we did not kill him. We could not. The fracture would have found another form regardless. Instead, we strapped him down, and I forced myself to log his condition. My slate recorded his vitals as a blur of overlapping numbers. No, the readings aligned. The slate trembled in my grip, as though resisting my attempt to contain truth. The craft slowed. It set us down on a new surface, one unseen through the viewport. The hatch opened without command. A hall stretched ahead, narrower than before, but lined with niches. Each niche held a corpse or perhaps a statue. Some wore imperial uniforms, others Xeno's armor, others chains with runes carved into their spines. All of them shared one trait. Their faces were flayed, skin peeled back to reveal expressionless bone. I recognized Valus among them, still standing, still half-living. His lips moved without sound. When I drew closer, the motion infected me, my jaw twitching as if rehearsing the silence he uttered. I fled backward, choking on dread. The niches whispered in chorus, not with words, but with hunger. Their silence was louder than any scream. Malcor aimed his weapon, but lowered it again. We both knew firing would accomplish nothing. The fracture had made death optional, choice irrelevant. We moved deeper. The air thickened, not with gas, but with memory. Each step brought recollections that did not belong to me. I remembered fighting on Cadia's walls, though I had never left the Segmentum Solar. I remembered kneeling before a Dark Eldar lord, though no such moment had ever occurred. Each false memory arrived heavy with guilt, as if I had lived it and failed it. Malcor halted suddenly. He looked at me, eyes wide, and asked if I remembered his child. I did not. He insisted her name was Leora, that she had braided her hair before he left, that I had promised to keep her safe should he fall. His desperation struck me like truth. Though I knew it false, still, a part of me pictured her, small and pale, her braid coiled like rope. The fracture was rewriting us with ghosts more potent than reality. We reached the hall's end. A door stood there. No, not a door, but a wound. A vertical gash cut into space itself. Flesh ringed its edges, pulsing faintly as though alive. Beyond lay only a void that shifted with shapes too large for comprehension. The Vox stuttered alive, screaming static, then resolving into one voice, countless mouths speaking as one. You are not 3. We fell to our knees. The voice continued, listing names both real and false. Doran, Henrith, Fear, Jaren, Valus, Kale, Leora, Malric. I heard my own name last, as if added after all the others, as though I were an afterthought written to. Late. You will be corrected. The voice and tone. The door wound, pulsed, expanding, drawing air and light into itself. The corpses in the niches stirred, their flayed faces turning toward us, their jaws opened as one, exhaling a gust of air that carried whispers of our names. Each corpse stepped forward, slow and deliberate, advancing with perfect unity. Malcor raised his laskin and fired. The beams struck true, but the corpses absorbed them without harm. Each impact left not a wound, but a memory inside my skull, moments of my death, repeated in dozens of ways, each more grotesque than the last. Saren, strapped behind us, began laughing despite the blood choking his throat. His laugh was Kel's. His eyes burned with light that was not light. He screamed, "I remember you all," before the straps split like rotten cloth. We fled into the wound, for behind us there was no choice left. The last thing I saw before crossing its threshold was my own corpse stepping from a niche, flayed and smiling. Crossing the wound was not movement. It was surrender. One moment I fled with lungs burning. The next I was elsewhere, though I cannot mark the instant between. Space folded, memory skipped, and I arrived. Yet arrival itself felt false. We stood in a place without horizon, a void stretched outward, black yet full of glimmering motes that pulsed like heartbeats. Each mote carried an image, faces, battles, worlds, rituals. Some I knew, some I did not. Others contradicted one another. I saw Valis both alive and dead, both kneeling in prayer and screaming in rebellion. I saw Kale laughing as he skinned himself alive. The motes drifted, rearranging with every breath. Malkor clutched his helmet as if to anchor himself. "We are not here," he whispered, voice brittle. His outline shimmered, fracturing slightly, as though the void struggled to decide what shape he should wear. At times he was older, with gray scars. At others he was young, bright-eyed, unbroken. His laskin shifted with him, sometimes rusted, sometimes pristine. Behind us, Saren staggered free of the wound. He was no longer Saren. His features had rearranged. His jaw was Kel's. His eyes were fierce. His voice carried all of them. When he spoke, the fracture writes, the fracture corrects. We are the ledger. We raised weapons out of instinct. But what would killing him mean in a place where death had no weight? The void pulsed around him in recognition, as if it had birthed its herald. I tried to record, to log, to anchor reality through words. The slate flickered alive, but every letter I typed unraveled. Rearranging into different entries, Malric arrived with Kale. Malkor fell on Cadia's walls. Saren never existed. The device was no longer a recorder. It was a scribe for the fracture itself. I dropped it, but it continued writing midair, letters burning across the dark. We moved because standing still meant surrender. Each step was strange. The ground formed only where our boots fell. Rippling outward like liquid stone, the motes descended as we walked, swirling close, whispering fragments of memory that were not ours. One brushed my helm, and I remembered giving orders to an army of billions. Another passed near Malkor, and he screamed with grief for a daughter who was not born. Saren or Kale, or whatever fusion he had become, followed at a distance, chanting in multiple voices at once. His words aligned with our heartbeats, forcing our steps into rhythm. 13 thrones, 13 echoes, flesh made ledger, bone made law. The chant bent the void, drawing new shapes. Ahead rose structures, towers of bone and mirrored glass, each twisted into impossible arcs. Some leaned inward, others outward, yet none fell. They reflected us in multiplied ways. Dozens of Malrics, dozens of Malkers, each distorted, each whispering soundlessly. Their mouths moved a fraction behind ours. As if predicting what we would say, I heard myself ask, "Are we dead?" The reflected Malrics answered in unison, "You will be." Malkor fired at the mirrors in panic. His shots pierced his own reflection, and in that instant his flesh smoked. A hole appeared in his shoulder exactly where the beam had struck the glass. He dropped, shrieking, blood gouting into the void where it hung suspended like rubies. The mirrors pulsed brighter, feeding on his pain. Saren laughed. His voice was a chorus of the lost. "You cannot fight what writes you." I dragged Malkor forward, though my gauntlets trembled. His wound sealed not with healing, but with words etched across his skin. Gothic letters burned into his flesh, sealing the hole. The words read, "Witness for the king." His breathing calmed, but his eyes were gone, replaced by parchment twice sockets inscribed with runes. He could no longer see. He whispered that he could still read me, that every heartbeat carried its own scripture. I feared him more alive than dead. The towers opened as we neared. Their mirrored faces folded outward like petals, revealing a central chamber. Inside lay a throne, not bone this time, but flayed skin stretched taut, stitched together by black wire. Upon it sat nothing, yet the absence itself radiated weight. Saren, stepped forward and fell to his knees. His voices overlapped in praise. Second King, keeper of faces, we return. The throne pulsed. The skin twitched as if breathing. My visor dimmed, overwhelmed by lightless glow. My thoughts stuttered. I remembered kneeling here before. I remembered offering my own face once, peeling it from bone, laying it on that throne. I felt phantom scars where none existed. Malkor gripped my arm. His new rune sockets streamed tears of blood. It is feeding on what we might have been, he hissed. Every path, every self, devoured. The skin throne whispered, though no sound carried. My own jaw moved without permission, voicing its words. Your flesh remembers what your soul denies. Sit, and you will echo forever. My knees bent despite my resistance. I struggled, every muscle at war. Malkor screamed scripture, his words tearing from his ruined eyes for a heartbeat. Resistance held. Then the most descended again, flooding me with visions, worlds burning, comrades flayed. A daughter I never fathered screaming my name. My body buckled. Saren pressed his hybrid face to the throne's base. His skin rippled as though eager to join. Strips of his flesh peeled free, crawling upward, stitching themselves into the seat. He did not resist. He laughed as his body unraveled, voice splitting into 1,000 fragments. Soon nothing remained but his skull, which melted into parchment and etched itself across the throne. Malkor shouted that we must flee. But where? The while was gone. The void offered no exit. Still, we dragged ourselves backward. The throne twitched. Disappointed yet patient. As we retreated, I glimpsed the towers shifting. More thrones revealed themselves in the distant skin, bone, shadow, fire. 13, exactly as the king had promised. Each waited empty, though I felt their weight upon me. Each demanded an occupant. The motes around us pulsed faster, rearranging into script across the sky. Words carved themselves into reality. Thrones must be filled. Echoes must sit. We ran though running meant nothing. Every step repeated. Deja vu folding over itself. Malkor's wound ray opened, sealing with new words each time. Oath-bearer, witness, ledger. His flesh became scripture. At last, the void itself, fractured, a crack tore open beneath us, showing the city we had left, the plaza, the craft, the niches, but distorted, wrong, the corpses all face upward, mouths open wide. We leapt without thought. Better to fall into the corpse city than remain before the throne. As we fell, I looked back one last time. The skin throne pulsed, and though no figure sat upon it, I saw myself there, face peeled away, mouth whispering words I had yet to learn. We landed without impact. Flesh caught us, not stone. The plaza was gone. In its place spread a surface woven of bodies, human, Xenos, things without name, all flayed and stitched together into an endless carpet. Their mouths gaped, soundlessly, as our boots pressed them down. Some were fresh, others ancient, but all breathed shallowly, as if trapped in an unending gasp. The craft still sat in the center, though its hull was swollen, distended like a corpse left in water. The glyph had changed again, not written, not remembered. It now read on. The letters bled, dripped onto the stitched floor, where the corpses writhed as if nourished. Malkor staggered beside me, his eye sockets streaming blood. More words had etched into his skin overnight, or perhaps in the seconds we had fallen. Ledger, witness, herald. His voice shook. It is inside me. Every blink writes another name. I cannot stop it. I wanted to answer, but my throat rebelled. The words were not mine when they emerged. 13 thrones remain. Do not resist your echo. My own voice betrayed me, chanting what I did not believe. Malkor seized me, shaking, screaming for me to fight. But my lips moved still, praising the king I had never sworn to. The stitched ground convulsed. Shapes rose, bodies lifting from the flesh carpet, their skins taut, their faces flayed clean. They assembled into ranks, silent, their bone-white skulls tilted in eerie unison. Each wore armor stripped of heraldry, each bearing weapons that shimmered half-formed, shifting between laskins, blades, and tools. They were soldiers without allegiance, echoes of every war ever fought. One stepped forward. Its skull was mine. My voice came from its mouth, saying words I had not yet spoken. Malric will sit. Malric will serve. Malric is already here. Malkor fired wildly, but each lost bolt passed through them like light through smoke. Yet every shot scarred him instead. New script burning across his flesh where the beam should have struck. He fell, his body writhing as though it were parchment being rewritten mid-sentence. I dragged him toward the craft, though its hatch pulsed. Like a living wound, we entered anyway, for there was no refuge beyond. Inside, the interior had warped. Bulkheads were bone struts. The seats had become thrones of flayed hide. The controls were veins and pulsing sinew, each button an eye that opened when pressed. Malcor collapsed into one of the seats. The veins wrapped his arms, locking him down. He screamed, but the sound was prayer now, not pain. His sockets flared. With lightless radiance, words poured from his lips faster than thought. Scripture both imperial and alien, interwoven into a single endless chain. His body slumped, yet the throne moved with him, veins burrowing deep, fusing until Malcor and machine were one. I begged him to fight. He whispered my name in response, but not as plea, as command. Malric said. The craft shuddered, rising though I had touched nothing. Outside, the stitched soldiers parted in ranks, bowing their flayed faces. The craft ascended into the dark above. Yet no stars marked the void, only reflections of ourselves, multiplied and distorted, waiting beyond. The vox crackled alive. My own voice filled it, chanting scripture I did not know. Then Valis' voice, broken, praying. Then Saren's laughter, Fierce Ben Herrick, Hammer's scream, all bled together. A single choir of the dead not dead. They repeated one phrase over and over, seared into my skull. You are not three. You are legion. You are already written. The ascent ended not in space, but in a chamber vast beyond reason. Towers ringed us, each bearing a throne. Some were bone, some skin, some shadow, some fire. All were occupied. I recognized them, all our squad, our ghosts, the soldiers from the niches, the corpses from the stitched carpet. Valis knelt upon one, unmoving. Saren grinned from another, flesh still crawling upward. Even Kale, who had never been, sat enthroned, skull polished clean. Only one throne remained empty. It pulsed as though awaiting blood. Malcor, fused to the veins, turned his ruined face toward me. It is yours. It always was. I denied him. I screamed denial, but the words came as praise. My legs carried me forward despite resistance. Every throne turned to face me, hollow eyes staring, their mouths open as one, whispering my name, echoing it until the sound became a storm. Malric, Malric, Malric. I staggered before the empty throne. Its surface was not bone nor skin, but polished. Mirror. I saw myself within it, flayed already, seated in obedience. My reflection smiled. While I wept out, I raised my last pistol to my skull. Perhaps death could sever the script. I pulled the trigger. The bolt fired. My head jerked back. But when I opened my eyes, I still lived. The reflection bled instead, whole, smoking in its temple. Then it leaned forward, whispering from the glass, "You cannot kill what is already written." I dropped the pistol. My knees buckled. The throne's surface rippled, opening like flesh. Veins extended, wrapping my arms. My own heartbeat faltered, caught, then synchronized with the pulse of the throne. I screamed until my voice split, but every echo returned. As chant, not cry, Malcor's scripture rose higher. The towers shook. The chamber vibrated with impossible resonance. The thrones themselves began to hum, each adding its own pitch until the sound became unbearable. A litany of 13 voices layering over one another. The empty throne dragged me closer. My vision split. I saw myself standing, resisting. I saw myself seated, enthroned, flayed. I saw myself already gone. All possibilities overlapped until no truth remained. The last words I remember before the throne claimed me were not my own. They were spoken by Kale, smiling from his seat. "Welcome home, brother." Then the mirror closed over my face. Silence. Not absence of sound, but silence as a presence, a weight that pressed into me from every direction. I opened my eyes and saw not darkness, not light, but reflection. I was seated, bound, yet also standing, watching myself across an endless hall of mirrors. Each mirror showed a different me, some armored, some flayed, some nothing but shadow. All were enthroned. All were smiling. The veins of the throne had burrowed deeper into my flesh. I could feel them crawling inside, mapping the rivers of my blood, replacing them with lines of script. Each heartbeat no longer belonged to me. It was punctuation in a sentence I could not read. From the other thrones came the voices of my squad. They spoke as one choir, yet I heard each distinct. Valis' prayer laced with static. Saren's laugh, wet and breaking. Henris' whisper, terrified and resigned. Even Kel's voice, though he had never lived among us. carried authority as though he had always been captain. They said only one phrase, "We are not lost. We are remembered." The words infected me. My mouth opened without permission, repeating a litany. With every repetition, I felt less resistance. Each syllable smoothed another edge of my mind until I no longer knew where denial ended and obedience began. The chamber shifted. The towers around us folded inward, their thrones rising higher, forming a spiral that twisted toward the void above. At the spiral's center, vast and unseen, something stirred. I could not look at it directly, yet its presence filled me, a king, faceless and absolute, watching his choir. Malker's voice rose louder than the rest. He had become more throned than man. His body stretched across veins that pulsed like arteries of the craft. His sockets glowed. His words burned. The ledger opens. The 13th rises. The cycle binds. I realized with dread what the script carved into him meant. He was no longer recording in ink or data. He was recording in flesh hours, mine. Every moment of resistance or surrender etched itself into his skin. And when the ledger closed, it would not be history, it would be law. The king's attention shifted toward me. I felt it, heavy as a world. My reflection in the mirror throne spoke, but it was not me. It was older, colder. "You are not Malric. You are function. You are the echo seat. You are the mouth that denies and yet proclaims." I screamed, but the scream left me twice. Once through my throat, raw and broken. Once through the reflection, perfect and calm. The choir answered the calm voice, not mine. They ignored the true, me, listening only to the echo that already obeyed. A surge passed through the veins. My body arched, seared by currents not electrical, but linguistic, burning me with words too vast to comprehend. Every scar, every pore, every vein in my flesh became a letter. I looked down and saw sentences crawling across me, etched in blood and light. Already written, already seated, already claimed. I begged for death, though I did not know who I begged. Perhaps the emperor, though he had never listened. Perhaps the faceless king, though he did not care. My plea was swallowed. The thrones laughed in response, hollow, flayed, endless. Then I saw beyond. The mirrors cracked, revealing not stone nor sky but wars. Armies clashed in silence. Humans, orcs, Eldari, Necrons, all tearing each other apart. I realized each war was not happening. It had happened. It would happen. They were records, stacked together like pages in a tome too vast to close. And each war ended the same way, with the throne standing amidst corpses, its occupant faceless, its scripture identical. That was the horror. We were not unique. We were repetition. I was one of countless Malrics enthroned across infinite ledgers, each seated when denial failed, each consumed in a function. My rebellion had been written. Before I spoke it, my surrender to the realization did not break me, it hollowed me. Resistance felt childish, like a child striking stone with bare hands. The script pressed tighter, whispering that to deny was not strength, but delay. I looked at Malkor. His mouth moved without pause, scripture spilling. His eyes met mine, sockets, burning with endless script. Yet within them, for a heartbeat, I saw grief. He knew. He was ledger and witness, but also still man enough to mourn what we had become. That grief gave me one last fragment of will. I spat blood, forced words that were mine alone. I am not written. The chamber froze. The choir halted. Even the veins trembled. For an instant, silence broke into fracture. My reflection twisted in the mirror, its smile faltering. Cracks spread across the throne's surface. Then the king stirred. His faceless weight crushed me, heavier than planets. My bones bent. My skin tore. The veins inside me writhed like serpents. The cracks sealed. My reflection smiled again, wider than before, and my own lips followed. I knew then it was over. My defiance had been anticipated, rehearsed, already recorded in the ledger. Even rebellion was scripture. The cycle allowed it because it had already absorbed it. My final words had not been mine at all. They had been his, spoken through me. At the appointed time, the choir resumed, louder, jubilant in their mockery. Malker's scripture blazed brighter, filling the chamber with fireless light. The spiral of thrones locked into place, and I, Malric, was no longer Malric. I was seated, enthroned, smiling in reflection. My name remained, but only as echo, my body a page, my soul a function. The king leaned closer, unseen yet undeniable. His first words reached me, written inside my marrow. "Welcome, 13th. You are not in. You are cycle. And I answered, against all that I had been, against all that I still thought I was. Yes, my king. I cannot say when the throne released me, or if it ever did. One moment I was bound, the next I was standing. Though the veins of the seat still pulsed within me, my body was mobile, but I was not free. I was both. Prisoner and priest, function and echo, the 13th as the king had named me. The chamber of mirrors folded inward, becoming corridors of flesh and glass. They stretched without end, and yet I knew where to walk. The throne script tugged at me, pulling me through twisting paths. At every turn I passed figure soldiers, saints, Xenos frozen in pains like insects trapped in amber. Their eyes followed me, pleading, condemning, promising. Each bore the same scar script carved across their flesh, the ledger of their surrender. I tried to avert my gaze, but my reflection in the glass obeyed nothing of me. It looked at them hungrily, smiled when I tried not to, whispered litanies of welcome. I was forced to hear the words my echo spoke, even when my lips remained still. The corridor opened into a vast amphitheater. It was not stone, nor steel, but pages, layers of parchment, flesh-like and vein, bound into a spiral descending without end. Every step I took crinkled like brittle paper, though no mark of my weight remained. The air was thick with ash, though none burned dotted the amphitheater's center, a pool of ink writhed, not liquid, not smoke, but a tide of memory. Images rose and fell within its surface. Wars replayed endlessly, the siege of Vrax, the burning of Prospero, the first Tyranid landings. I knew these histories, but here they bent. A single soldier faltered where once he had stood firm. A general spoke silence where once he had given command. The battle shifted, outcomes twisted, always. The changes ended the same way. A throne erected amid ruin, a figure seated. Faceless, I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. These were not histories, they were edits. The ledger was not recording, it was rewriting. And I was now part of the quill. Malcor emerged beside me, or what was left of him. His body was a scroll now, unfurling endlessly, words crawling over. His stretched skin, his face remained human, though cracked by script, his eyes dim. You see, he said, voice fragile, but inexorable. History is clay, memory is wax. The throne sculpts, the king seals. We are tools. No, I rasped, but my denial carried no strength. Even as I spoke it, my reflection leaned forward, smiling, whispering the opposite into the amphitheater. The ink responded to the reflection, not to me. Ripples spread, and I watched a war one did not recognize an imperial crusade into the ghoul stars shift. Beneath my echo's words, soldiers froze mid-charge, turned, and knelt to a throne that had not existed a heartbeat before. The outcome, bent, became new scripture. Malcor touched my arm, his fingers trembling scrolls. Do not waste energy resisting. The ledger will use your rebellion. Better to guide it. His voice cracked at the last word, as though the light cost him more than truth. The amphitheater trembled. Above us, thrones descended, 9 of them, carrying the others of my squad. Vows wept hymns. Saren's laughter echoed through a jollis. Maw. Henrith clutched an icon. Though his shape shifted with every glance, they circled me, their voices rising as one. Echo, echo, echo. The 13th speaks, the 13th seals. My body moved without my command. My arms spread, my mouth opened. Words poured forth, not mine, not even my reflections, but the king's. They thundered through me like thunder across stone. Rewrite, collapse, sealed out. The ink pool boiled. Histories fractured, converging. I saw armies kneel that had never existed, banners raised that bore symbols alien even to the warp. A spiral of wars connected, feeding into one point, Commorragh. The dark city writhed, its spires folding like paper, its denizens torn into script. The Flayed Kings spread across it like a plague of quills. I gasped as my vision snapped back. The amphitheater was gone. I stood once more in the labyrinthine corridors, but something followed me now. The rewritten wars lingered inside my skull. I could still hear the screams of armies undone, echoes that would never have existed but now did. Malcor shambled behind me, whispering, "You will learn. The ledger writes through us, not with us. Each of us carries ink. Yours is fresh. It will be drawn soon." His words rattled, paper tearing within his chest. A door appeared ahead, no frame, no wall, just a boundary of shadow etched with script. My reflection pressed its palm against it, though I had not. The door yawned open. A wind of ash and whispering voices spilled through. Beyond lay a chamber of chains. Each chain suspended a figure, hanging skinless, faceless, yet alive. They twitched, whispering fragments of prayers, curses, equations. The chains connected upward into a void unseen, downward into nothingness. At the chamber's center was a single empty hook, swaying an invitation. The choir arrived, surrounding me, their voices swelling. Seat, bind, function. I knew, with perfect clarity, what would happen if I stepped forward. My flesh would be stripped, my name erased, my body chained into scripture. I would become page, not priest, and yet the throne script compelled me. My legs trembled with the command to obey. For the first time since the cycle began, I felt rage, pure and unfiltered. It was useless, I knew, another function already written, but it burned, and I clung to it. I forced my lips shut, fighting the words that sought to spill. My chest ached with the pressure of unsaid scripture. Malka's dim eyes met mine. For an instant, I saw pity. Then, softly, he whispered, "The hook awaits." I screamed, not words, not litany, just sound. The chamber shook, the chains rattled, the choir faltered, my reflection staggered. It smiled cracking. The hook at the center swayed violently. The king's presence surged. Vast and merciless, my bones splintered under the weight. Blood streamed from my eyes, ears, mouth. The scream died in my throat. My reflection recovered, smiling once more. The hook stilled. I collapsed to my knees. The script crawled across my skin, binding tighter. The choir resumed. The cycle had absorbed my scream, just as it had my defiance before. Even rage was scripture. But as I knelt, shaking, I noticed something the others did not. One chain thin, rusted, nearly broken, hung loose in the farthest corner. The figure bound to it twitched differently, not in rhythm, not in cycle. Its whispers were not echo, but silence, hope, fragile and poison. Flickered within me. The chamber reeked of iron and parchment. Chains clattered with a rhythm too precise to be random, too rhythmic to be liturgical. I knelt, bound not by steel, but by the ledger inside me, the veins of script still writhing beneath my skin. My squad's voices encircled me, their litanies, rising in crescendo, urging me toward the empty hook. Yet my gaze fixed elsewhere on the rusted chain. The figure suspended from it did not move with the others. Its whispers were not the endless choir of obedience, but fragments of silence, not words, but absences between them. That absence gnawed at me. It should not exist here. Nothing existed outside the script, and yet it remained. I rose unsteadily, ignoring the compulsion that tore at my muscles. My reflection in the mirrored vein sneered, straining to hold me back, but the rusted chain seemed to draw me onward. My steps echoed louder than they should, as though the entire chamber leaned closer to listen. The closer I came, the more I saw. The bound figure was not skinless, not faceless. It was unfinished. Flesh hung half-formed, features blurred, as if the ledger had failed to decide what to carve. Where words should have been etched into its body, there were gaps, empty lines, missing script. My breath caught. The ledger had faltered. Malka's voice cracked from behind me. "Do not touch it. It is absence. It is error. It should not remain." He reached toward me, parchment skin trembling, but did not approach. Fear held him back. The choir faltered, their chanting stuttering as they sensed what I approached. Their voices turned to static, then to screams. The throne shook, ash falling like snow. The king's presence pressed heavier, demanding I turn back. But I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched the figure's chest. Silence, true silence, deeper than any I had known. The chamber, the choir, the king all muted. For an instant, I was alone. No echo, no reflection, no compulsion, just myself. Then the figure's head snapped upward, its eyes, unfinished voids, fixed on mine. Its mouth opened, and absence spilled forth. Not sound, not words, something less. A hole where a voice should be. Into that void poured memory. I saw the ledger falter in ages past. Wars erased instead of rewritten. Thrones unseated before there. Function bound. I saw other Malrics, other 13ths, reaching the same momentan failing. Some recoiled, terrified. Some were consumed instantly. Some touched, as I had, and were swallowed whole. But always the error remained. The rusted chain endured, waiting for another echo to find it. I staggered back, gasping. But the silence clung to me. The veins of script beneath my skin writhed violently, trying to smother it. But they could not. For the first time since the throne claimed me, I felt something foreign to the cycle. Possibility. The choir shrieked in disarray, their litany breaking into fragmented accusations, error, blasphemy, anomaly. My reflection clawed at the mirrored surface, its smile gone, its features twisted in panic. It mouthed words I could not hear, but its terror was clear. Malcor collapsed to his knees, scroll skin tearing as he wept. You have seen it. You have touched what we are forbidden. Now it will devour you. The rusted chain groaned, straining. The unfinished figure jerked violently, as if awakened. Its whispers grew louder, still absence, still void, but expanding, pulling the chamber apart. The other chains rattled in fear, their bound figures screaming as the cycle strained. Then the king moved. His weight descended like a collapsing star, crushing air, bone, thought of my body bent, ribs cracking, blood flooding my mouth. The ledger's script flared white-hot inside me, burning to erase the absence I carried. My reflection reformed its smile, triumphant, confident that this was only another rebellion scripted to fail. But the rusted chain snapped. The figure fell, hitting the ground with a wet, unfinished thud. The silence it carried surged outward, ripping through the chamber. Mirrors shattered, chains broke. The choir screamed as their voices were swallowed, their echoes cut short. The figure stood. Its body was still incomplete, blurred, unfinished, but it stood, and when it looked at me, I knew. It was not prisoner. It was option, a possibility the ledger could not bind. It raised its hand, and though it had no mouth, I heard it speak within the silence. Unwritten. The word tore through me. The veins of script inside me convulsed, fighting. My skin split, letters bleeding out as black light. My reflection shattered, screaming wordlessly as its smile finally broke. The king roared, not sound, but force, a tidal wave of inevitability. The throne behind me reared, chains snapping, hooks swinging, desperate to reclaim me. But the silence pushed back. For the first time, the cycle trembled. Malcor crawled toward me, his scroll body unraveling, his eyes wide. Take it, he gasped. Take the void, end it, or bind it. Whatever it is, choose. His body collapsed into loose parchment, scattering into the void. His final word lingered, choose. The unfinished figure pressed its hand against my chest. My heart convulsed. I felt the cycle pulling, the ledger demanding I bind, repeat, obey. But the silence whispered otherwise. Absence, freedom, and my hands shook. My mouth filled with blood. My reflection reformed, clawing from the shards, whispering insistently, you are echo, you are written. Say yes. But the silence whispered nothing, and that nothing was mine. The chamber split as the two forces tore at me, the ledger pulling me back into cycle, the silence dragging me into absence. Chains snapped, walls folded, thrones crumbled. The king's faceless weight pressed closer, while the unfinished figure's void expanded. I screamed, not in litany, not in rebellion, just in the raw sound of a man at the fracture of fate. And then the chamber collapsed into black. I woke without waking, my eyes opened, but there was no world, no chamber, no throne, only black. Not the black of void space, not the black of sleep. This was thicker, heavier, as though it pressed against my skin, filling my lungs with its weight. I coughed, but no sound came. My throat moved, my chest heaved, but the void swallowed every noise before it could live. For a moment, I thought I had died, that the silence had devoured me entirely, erasing both echo and man. But then I felt it, the veins still crawling beneath my flesh. They twitched like worms, desperate, wounded. The ledger had not released me. I was not freed. I was stranded. Between functions, neither written nor erased. A light appeared, faint, crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat. I staggered toward it, though the black had no ground, no gravity. Each step stretched into eternity, yet the light remained just close enough to reach. When my fingers brushed it, the world convulsed. Stone slammed beneath my feet. Air rushed into my lungs, bitter with ash. I collapsed, retching, spitting out tar-like blood that crawled on its own before dissolving. Around me, a hall stretched into shadow arches of bone, walls of carved scripture that shifted when I blinked. The silence had not left me, but here it coexisted with sound. Whispers drifted through the dark, layered, overlapping, none distinct. I tried to rise. My limbs shook violently, not from weakness, but from disagreement. Some obeyed me, others twitched with the ledger's command. When I forced my hand against the wall, script bled from my palm, searing itself into the stone. I yanked back, horrified. My body was still Quill, still Page. Something moved in the dark. Chains rattled. Slow and deliberate. My breath caught. From the farthest arch emerged a figure not unfinished like the one I had touched, but whole, radiant in its grotesquerie. A flayed king, skin draped across it like vestments, inscriptions glowing where veins should be. Its faceless head tilted, regarding me with interest. 13th, it intoned. Though no mouth moved, the word pressed directly into my skull. You remain. Cycle endures. I staggered back. No, I touched the absence. I broke it. My voice was hoarse, ragged. But even as I spoke, I heard my echo in the shadows repeating the same words with a smile. The ledger was not gone. The king drifted closer. Its presence corroded the air, turning every breath into fire. Absence does not end. Absence is function. Even anomaly is written. Did you think yourself free? The silence stirred within me at those words, not as command, but as resistance. It gnawed at the script under my skin, tearing letters into fragments. Pain lanced through me, but I embraced it. It was mine. I am not written. I forced out, though the words cracked, broken. The king paused, its faceless head tilted again, as though listening to something beyond hearing. Then, impossibly, it stepped back. Perhaps, perhaps not. The ledger allows doubt, for doubt feeds cycle. Behind it, more figures stirred, shadows detached from the arches, revealing thrones. 9 of them, occupied by my squad. Their bodies remained chained, etched, but their eyes open. They looked at me, recognition flickering. Valus's lips moved, forming a prayer that the ledger swallowed before I could hear. Henry shook his head, tears running as blood. Saren laughed, jawless, soundless, his mirth echoing inside my bones. I screamed at them, fight it. You can see it. You're not echoes. But their mouths opened in unison, and the chorus resumed. Function, cycle, seal. Their voices shook the hall. The silence inside me recoiled, shrieking without sound. My veins burned hotter. The flayed king raised one hand, its flesh dripping like melted wax. Chains snaked from its fingers, slithering toward me. I tried to run, but my legs buckled. The chains wrapped around my arms, my throat, my chest, binding me to the wall. Script flared, searing my flesh. You will seat, the king said. You will bind. The 13th throne awaits. The silence writhed within me, weaker, smothered beneath the ledger's weight. Panic flooded me. I had thought the rusted chain meant hope, meant freedom. But here, bound again, I saw the truth. Absence was no guarantee. It was only a chance, fragile and fleeting. The king's chains pulled, dragging me toward an empty throne at the hall's end. Its surface gleamed wetly, veins writhing in anticipation. My body fought, screaming with pain, torn between obedience and rebellion. Then, faintly, I heard it, not from the hall, not from the king, from within me. The unfinished figures whisper, unwritten not the word flared like a weapon. My veins convulsed, script shattering into fragments that scattered like embers. The chains faltered, the throne shuddered, its veins retreating. The flayed king recoiled, faceless head jerking back. Anomaly, its voice cracked, less certain. The other thrones shifted uneasily, their occupants twitching as if the word reached them too. Valus's eyes widened. Henrith gasped. Even Saren's laughter faltered. I seized the moment. I forced the word from my throat, louder, burning, unwritten. The silence exploded outward. Chains shattered, the hall trembled. The flayed king staggered, pieces of flesh sloughing from its body. My squad screamed, their voices splitting, some still chanting, others crying out in confusion. The ledger cracked around us, its script unraveling in threads of light. But with the cracks came something worse. From beyond the fractures poured figures countless. Endless other echoes, other 13ths, their faces mine, their bodies enthroned. They reached through the breaks, clawing desperate, screaming for release. Each one bore my voice, my defiance, my surrender, all at once. The hall dissolved into a storm of cells, a spiral of infinite Malrics clawing at me, begging me to take their place, to free them, to bind them. I could not tell which were true, which were lies, perhaps none. Perhaps all died at the center of the storm. The flayed king steadied, its faceless void glowing with the king's vast presence. You will choose, seat or race, bind or void, but you cannot remain between. Cycle demands end. The silence screamed within me, demanding void. The ledger seared, demanding seat. My own voice fractured between them. I fell to my knees, shaking, every bone threatening to split, and above it all, my reflection reappeared in a shard of broken script, smiling, waiting. The storm of selves howled around me, a spiral of infinite mouths speaking with my voice. Some wept, some cursed, some prayed, all clawed at me with hands that were mine, all demanded my answer. I was drowning in myself, and every fragment wanted something different. One clung to my leg, eyes hollow, begging, seat, and the cycle by becoming it. Another tore at my chest, nails digging deep, screaming, erase, choose nothing and all will, be freed. Dozens more raged and wailed, each carrying the weight of the 13th choice. The hall itself fractured beneath the storm. Script bled from the walls, dripping as molten light. The chain thrones cracked, the echoes of my squad tearing themselves apart. Valis's voice broke through the cacophony. Ra, desperate, Malric, don't let it decide for you. But what was choice when every option had already been written? The Flayed King loomed in the storm's eye, faceless yet unyielding. Its voice cut through the noise. Hammer it into my skull. You will not linger. Between his sin, between feeds chaos. Decide. 13th. The silence within me stirred, vast and terrible. It whispered of oblivion, of ending not just myself, but all cycles, all echoes, all thrones. A mercy through annihilation, yet the ledger still crawled in my veins. Urging function, demanding seat. To embrace it would bind me to eternity, but eternity was survival, even if as a prisoner. My body split along the decision, half pulled toward the waiting throne, half toward the voice screaming through the cracks, bones splintered, veins ripped. My skin tore as letters tried to flee. I felt myself becoming multiple, half a king, half a void, both futures writhing inside one flesh. Then came the reflection. It stepped calmly through the storm, unmarked, smiling, my double. The unfinished echo, you cannot escape by choosing. What they offer, it said. Its voice was steady, cutting through screams like steel. Both paths belonged to the ledger, thrown and void of the same chain. You must write a third. I staggered, clutching my splitting chest. There is no third. There always is, it replied, eyes burning with calm certainty. It is not given. It must be carved. The Flayed King hissed, its faceless void contorting. Chains lashed out, striking the reflection, but passed through as though it were mist. Deceit, the king thundered, anomaly of anomaly. Silence cannot birth function. Choice is illusion. The reflection ignored it. It extended its hand to me. I am you without script. You are me with it. Together, we can write a new seal. Pain blinded me. My skull split with echoes, my lungs filled with tar, but beneath it, a pulse stirred. Not the ledgers, not the silences, my own fate, fragile, but mine. I reached for the reflection's hand. When our palms touched, the hall convulsed. Every self in the storm shrieked, dissolving into ash. My veins exploded with light, script burning away into embers. The silence roared, resisting, but I pulled it to, forced it into the fire. Not absence, not command, something else. For one instant, I was free. I opened my mouth and spoke not the ledger's language, not silence, but something I had never known, a word with no history, no script. The moment it left my lips, the world cracked apart, the throne shattered, their chains falling, my squad collapsed, their bodies dissolving into dust. The Flayed King screamed, its faceless void collapsing inward, folding into nothingness. The arches of the hall fractured, collapsing into endless dark. But the storm did not vanish, it condensed. All the infinite selves, all the unmade cycles, all the echoes of me converged, folding into my body. Every possibility slammed into me, burning, erasing, rewriting. I was crushed under the weight of 1,000 choices I had never made, 1,000,000 failures and victories, all poured into one vessel. I fell to my knees, vomiting fire. My flesh peeled away, replaced with script that twisted and reformed. My reflection still stood before me, unburned, untouched. It smiled. You see now, freedom is not escape. It is burden. It is carrying what cannot be carried. My throat bled as I spoke. What am I now? The reflection leaned close, its voice a whisper. You are the seal. My heart stopped. My veins went cold. I understood. By refusing both throne and void, by speaking a new word, I had not ended the cycle. I had become its container. The ledger, the silence, the anomalies, all of it folded into me. Bound by my refusal, I was no longer written, but I was no longer unwritten either. I was the line between, the scar where choice had been made. The hall faded into dust. My squad was gone. The Flayed King was gone. Only black remained, stretching infinite. Yet I was not dissolved into it. I stood, breathing, heart silent but alive. The reflection began to fade, its smile lingering as light. They will seek you. Kings, voids, cycles. They will come, for you are proof, the 13th without function. The seal that should not be. Its hand brushed my shoulder, then it vanished, leaving me alone for the first time. The silence was not inside me. The ledger no longer crawled. My body was mine, but heavier than worlds. Within my chest, the storm of self still churned, bound by my word. They whispered, they clawed, but they could not escape. I had saved no one. I had destroyed nothing. I had only carried everything in the infinite dark. I laughed. It was a broken, hollow sound, but it was mine. The echo of it carried on, and for once, it did not repeat against the ledger's will. I walked into the dark, each step cracking the void beneath me. I did not know where it led. Perhaps nowhere. Perhaps to the origin of the ledger. Perhaps to a place beyond silence. But I walked anyway, because if there was no function left to bind me, then walking was my choice. And that was enough for now. The dark was no longer still at first. I thought it was my own burden groaning inside me, the storm of selves clawing and whispering in their prison. But then I felt it beyond. Pressure, immense, watching, patient. The void had always been silent, indifferent. Now it leaned close, listening. The first ripple came as a sound, a chime, soft, delicate. It repeated at intervals, the same hollow note echoing through the dark. Each time it rang, the storm inside me shuddered, as though answering a command I had not given. Then came the shapes. They drifted out of the black, impossibly vast, without form, until one dared look directly. Each resembled something different depending on the eye that observed them. Cathedrals of bone, cities folded inside themselves, faces stretched across stars. They circled me, orbiting with slow hunger. I understood at once. These were not the Flayed Kings. They were older, vaster, the architects of function and silence both. They were not bound to the ledger. They had written the stone upon which it had first been carved, and they had noticed me. My knees weakened under their gaze. My skin bled script that had not been called. Letters searing into the air, dissolving before they could form words. The storm inside my chest screamed, sensing their authorship. They wanted me, not as throne, not as void, but as aberration. The chime grew louder. It became rhythm, then hymn. I realized with horror that it was not sound at all. It was their communication, their pulse. A litany only they shared, now pressed against me. One broke from the orbit, descending. Its shape bent thought itself. I could not bear to fix my gaze, but in its presence I felt the scale of my error. I was no seal. I was a beacon. My refusal, my word, my so-called freedom, it had lit me like a flare in endless night. They converged. The vast one stretched a limb, or a thought, or an intent, and touched me. My body convulsed, every vein exploding in script. My eyes filled with letters. My ears bled prayers in tongues I had never known. The storm inside me howled, clawing to escape, but they held it fast. They were studying, dissecting. I tried to resist. I spoke again the word that had unbound me, the word that was mine alone. It left my mouth like fire, but instead of repelling them, it only deepened their interest. Their hymn shifted, growing faster, resonant. They imitated the sound. They had learned it. Terror rooted me. I had given them something new, something they could use. The vast one leaned closer, its enormity swallowing me whole. Through its shifting faces, I saw my reflection multiplied 1,000-fold, each version of me screaming a different fate. Some crowned, some flayed, some hollow. They were showing me my futures, not to frighten me, but to remind me, to prove their claim, that I belonged to them. I spat blood, my body unraveling. I will not be written again. The faces smiled with one voice. You are not written. You are writing. The voice shivered at their words. New arcs of light cracked across the black, revealing what lay beneath an ocean of other selves, other echoes. Millions bound in stasis, not just mine, others, soldiers, priests, kings, every refusal, every deviation, every anomaly caught across eternity, all sealed, all kept, waiting. I staggered, nausea breaking me. I had not ended anything. I had joined a collection. One of the storm selves broke through my ribs. its half-formed head screaming before it dissolved. The entities fed on it, absorbing its cry, folding it into their hymn. They were consuming me piece by piece, integrating my rebellion into their archive. In desperation, I fell to my knees and dug my fingers into the nothing beneath me. My nails split, bone grinding, but I felt something solid below the faint outline of another seal. Not mine, older, buried beneath layers of dark. The hymn faltered when I touched it. The vast one recoiled slightly, its orbit slowing. They feared. This dog I drove my hand deeper, tearing flesh, ripping script, forcing myself through the barrier of my own body. The storm of selves wailed, trying to stop me, but I tore further until my palm struck stone, cold, carved. It burned my flesh instantly, but I held fast. A word etched there seared into me. Not silence, not function, something harsher, crueler, a command older than the ledger. I could not read it fully, but I felt its purpose, containment. Not of me, not of my kind, of them. The entities hymn turned shrill, discordant. They closed in, trying to sever me from the buried seal. My veins burst, script pouring out like molten glass. But I refused to let go. For the first time, I saw fear ripple through their vast forms. My mouth opened. The storm of selves roared in unison, no longer pulling apart, but pushing as one. Together, we screamed the half-word from the seal. The void CONVULSED. The orbit shattered. The entities screamed, their vastness fracturing, light bleeding from their cores. The hymn collapsed into static, rupturing my skull, but I did not release the word. I bled it out, syllable by syllable, carving it into the dark. Something ancient, stirred beneath the black, awakened by its own forgotten command. The vast ones recoiled, their forms unraveling, their faces splitting apart into raw geometry. For a moment, the universe inverted, every star in silence drawn into the buried seal. And in that aversion, I saw the truth. The Flayed Kings were not rulers. They were prisoners. These vast entities had been contained once before, bound by words etched into impossible stone. The ledger, the thrones, the silence, all were wardens, not masters. The kings had only been masks. And now I had cracked their prison. The entities pulled back, folding into the edges of the void. Their hymn fell silent, but I knew silence was never permanent. They were not destroyed. They were only watching, waiting, and I had given them a piece of myself, a word they should never have heard. I collapsed, my body ruined, my storm restless but bound. Blood pooled beneath me, though there was no floor to catch it. I whispered, barely able to hear my own voice. What have I done? The dark did not answer, but something deep below the buried seal stirred again. Not the entities, not the kings. Something older, something that had written the command in the first place, and it was waking. The dark beneath the seal pulsed. At first, I thought it was my own blood dripping into endless nothing. But the rhythm was wrong, too slow, too deliberate. Each pulse sent cracks spidering through the buried stone, each tremor shaking the prison that had bound entities vaster than comprehension. The hymn of the orbiting giants was gone, but their silence was worse. They had not retreated in defeat. They had withdrawn in fear. I lay broken, half dissolved, ribs jutting like fractured iron. The storm of selves churned inside me, restless, demanding. They whispered over each other, their voices now sharpened with panic. Seal it back, seal it back, seal it before it rises. I could not. The stone beneath my hand was crumbling, molten letters burning through my skin. They seared into me, rewriting even as they unraveled. My blood hissed into the cracks, feeding the awakening. Then the voice came. Not him, not echo, not silence. It was older than sound, yet I heard it in every part of my body, from marrow to skin. Each word was a fracture, each syllable a blade. Who breaks the 13th seal? I convulsed. While rising, my jaw dislocated, forced open by the resonance. My voice split, a dozen tones overlaying. I did not mean. Meaning is dust. Act is stone. The pulse quickened, matching my heart though mine had already stopped. You are line. You are scar. You are not throne. You are not void. You are breach. The entities still lingered at the horizon, vast shadows trembling. They did not speak, but I felt their intent. They had not created this thing. They had been created to contain it. The storm of self screamed inside me, tearing at the walls of my chest. They wanted release. They wanted to flee, but I held them down. If they escaped, they would be swallowed, and I with them. The cracks widened. From the fissure seeped not light, not dark, but something raw, absence of both, a hunger without shape. It touched me, and for one breath, every self I carried dissolved, leaving me hollow dot in that hollow. I felt it fully. The origin, the first unwritten dot spoke again. Not with words, but with certainty pressed into bone. The Flayed Kings, the ledger. The silence all had been tools, constructs to hold it dormant. The entities above had been architects of its prison, not rulers of creation, and now, because I had refused throne and void, I had loosened the chain. The ground beneath me dissolved, and I fell, not down, but through myself, through the echoes of my squad, through memories I had never lived. I saw a billion cycles, each ending with the same choice, throne, void, or breach. None had ever chosen as I had. None had spoken a word outside the script. I was the first, and because I was the first, I was the key. I landed in a chamber without walls, without roof, without air. It was carved from thought, etched with symbols that bled themselves into oblivion as soon as I saw them. At the center hung a figure, not bound by chains, but suspended by its own gravity. It had no flesh, no bone, no form, and yet I knew it instantly. It was every shape I had ever feared, every god I had ever prayed to, every nightmare I had tried to forget. It was all masked at once, and none. It regarded me with infinite stillness. Then it spoke. You carry them. Yes, I whispered, throat raw. You carry word not mine, not theirs, yours. I nodded, trembling. That word is fracture. That word is wound. Wounds bleed. My chest split. Script poured from me. The storm of selves dragged out, screaming. They writhed around me, fleshless and furious, tearing themselves to pieces as they circled the figure. The figure inhaled, and the storm was gone. I collapsed, gasping, empty. The burden I had carried was devoured in an instant. Relief struck, sharp, almost sweet. For the first time in an eternity, I was alone in myself, but then the truth burned through me. The storm had been my anchor. Without them, I was hollow. The word I had spoken, the refusal that had given me freedom, it slipped, shuddered, cracked. I felt it unravel, piece by piece, consumed by the thing that now stood unbound. You gave me key, it said. Its voice tore through thought itself, making the void around us tremble. You opened scar. You carried seal. Now I am. The chamber shook, its walls folding in and out of time. Faces pressed through the black, screaming. Not mine this time, others. Millions. Every sealed anomaly from the ocean I had seen. The figure absorbed them, pulling them into itself, its shape swelling, its gravity deepening. I staggered to my feet, broken ribs grinding. If you rise, everything ends. It repeated, as though tasting the word. No, begins. Function and silence are cages. I am before both. I am word without reader, thought without script, hunger without end. I backed away, though there was nowhere to go. The cracks spread across the chamber, spilling raw absence into all directions. The entities at the horizon screamed, their hymn returning, desperate. They hurled themselves against the edges, trying to close what I had opened. The figure ignored them. Its attention never left me. You are mine, it said. No, I whispered, though the word rang hollow, without the storm to support it. You cannot refuse. Refusal is mine. Scar is mine. Word is mine. You spoke, and I was written. I dropped to my knees, my skin peeled away in flakes of script, each dissolving before it touched the ground. My lungs filled with nothing, choking me. Yet still I breathed, forced to endure die in that agony. A thought clawed its way through. If my word had written it, then another could unwrite it. Not silence, not throne, something new again, something beyond refusal. But I had no storm left, no burden. I was hollow. I was one voice, and one voice could not birth a new word. The figure stretched, vast and endless, rising through the cracks. The chamber collapsed, folding into it. Its gravity pulled everything, every cycle, every sealed self, every prison. Even the entities fled, their hymns scattering. I was dragged toward it, my body unraveling into script, my mouth open, but no word came. Only blood, only broken syllables. The figure leaned close, its face an infinite mirror of mine. You are my 13th. The void shattered. The shatter was not sound. It was the absence of every sound that had ever been. I felt my body dissolve into fractures, each piece of me hurled into a different era, a different possibility. Some fragments burned as kings, others screamed as martyrs, others simply rotted in silence. Yet all of them were me, dragged back together by the gravity of the thing I had unsealed. The first unwritten rose through me. Its form was unbounded, a wound-given shape. Every mirror of myself stared from its infinite surface, each broken possibility stitched into its hide. It was my reflection, multiplied until the concept of me became absurd. I tried to scream, but my voice had already been written into its hymn. My refusal, my word, my scar sang them back at me in tones vast enough to break galaxies. I had no voice left, yet I still had thought, and thought was dangerous. I focused on the hollow inside me. The absence left when the storm of selves was consumed. That emptiness was mine. It was not silence, not function, not hunger. It was simply space. Space where a word could be spoken. The first unwritten loomed, filling eternity. Its intent pressed down, crushing, undeniable. You are mine, it said, a truth woven through every particle of my being. But I remembered. I remembered the Hall of Thrones, the ledger in my veins, the Flayed Kings' faceless demand. I remembered choosing neither, carving a third. That had been mined out if once, then twice. My mouth bled as I forced it open. The first unwritten leaned closer, waiting, certain. I tasted iron and void, my tongue splitting with the effort. I did not know the word. I only knew the hollow, and from hollow I spoke. The word was not denial. It was not refusal. It was not command. It was something smaller, sharper, a word not for sealing, but for ending. Not theirs, not mine. Final, the void cracked again. This time inward, the first unwritten recoiled. For the first time, its infinite faces twisted not in hunger, but in surprise. My word cut through its hymn, tearing threads, unbinding its certainty. It had not expected this. It had thought me hollow, drained. It had forgotten the strength of a single voice. The entities at the horizon howled, their hymn turning triumphant. Desperate to bind what I had wounded, they surged forward, chains of light and dark twining together. Striking the first unwritten as it reeled dotted screamed, a sound that inverted reality. Stars flared and died in that single note. My body burned away. Flesh, bone, thought all turned to script and then ash. Yet I held to the word, repeating it, bleeding it, even as nothing of me remained. Each repetition weakened the thing, each syllable carving deeper into its form. It turned its infinite mirrors on me, rage boiling. Every face of mine howled, demanding silence, demanding surrender. My ribs cracked open, my heart bursting, but I still spoke. The entities chained it, dragging it back toward the buried seal. The chamber reformed, stone knitting itself, runes igniting with fire older than time. The prison closed, not perfect, not whole, but enough to bind it again. But it would not go alone. Its hand of such vastness could be called that shot. Forward, piercing me, not flesh, not soul, but the last remnant of me that was still mine, my word. It seized it, tore it from me, even as the chains dragged it down, and then it was gone. The seal slammed shut, the void steadied, the entities retreated, their hymn fading into distance. Silence returned, vast and terrible. I collapsed, or perhaps I already had. There was nothing left of me but ash drifting through an endless black. No storm, no burden, no body, just awareness, thin and unraveling. I had spoken the ending, and yet I had not ended. Something still burned at me, not my word. It had taken that, stolen it, hidden it in its wound. A fragment of me remained, trapped inside the first unwritten even as it was chained. I was both prison and prisoner, scar and sealed. I drifted, hollow. Time passed, or did not. Eventually, I felt the brush of light, a transmission, not divine, not cosmic, human, to any receiving unit. This is exploratory vessel eminence of dawn. We have entered what appears to be an uncharted segment near the Commorragh rift. Readings unstable, no contact, atmosphere strange, the signal fractured, cut by static. But I felt them, humans, explorers, servants of the Imperium, wandering too close, and in their proximity, I stirred. The hollow inside me vibrated, resonant with their voices. My ash drew together, faint outlines forming, not body, not flesh, but shadow. The seal had not erased me, it had only thinned me, stretched me across time, and now, their presence called me back. I tried to warn them, to speak, but the only sound that left was the echo of the first unwritten, still lodged in me, a whisper not mine, bleeding from my hollow mouth. 13th, the transmission screamed. Then cut to black. I floated, unseen, unheard, carried on the silence. Perhaps they would mark these coordinates. Perhaps they would call them forbidden. Perhaps they would return, thinking they could harvest what slept here. And when they did, I would answer, not as soldier, not as seal, not as free, but as scar. The last image I held was not mine. It was theirs, the Flayed Kings, faceless and eternal, watching from their broken thrones. They had known, they had waited. I had only been another mask in their endless play, and behind them, behind all thrones and voids, the wound still pulsed, waiting for the day my word, stolen and inverted, would be spoken back into the galaxy. I drifted, hollow, eternal, whispering into the silence, not a prayer, not a warning, just the truth I had become. I am the scar,